"Mister, are you a bad man?" The little girl's voice trembled in the freezing night, but her eyes didn't. She was standing in front of a man people whispered about, a man who owned half the city, a man whose silence meant someone wouldn't live to see morning. And yet, she stepped closer. No fear. No hesitation. Just one question. The kind of question no one had ever dared ask him before. And for the first time in 15 years, that man didn't have an answer. Because standing in front of him wasn't an enemy. It was a child. A child who reminded him of the one person he failed to save. If you love emotional stories about family, sacrifice, and second chances, subscribe to the channel. You don't want to miss what happens next. This story didn't begin in that alley. It began 2 hours earlier, in a small, broken apartment, where the lights had already gone out. The clock on the wall showed 9 p.m. Noah sat by the window, knees pulled to his chest, staring down at the empty street like he was waiting for something or someone to appear. He was only 6 years old. But his eyes didn't belong to a child. They carried weight, the kind you only see in people who've already lost too much. Behind him, on an old sagging couch, his twin sister June clutched a worn pillow tightly against her chest. "Aunt Mimi said she'd be home by 8, she whispered. Her voice was soft, careful, like she was afraid even speaking might make things worse. Noah didn't answer right away. He kept looking outside. The streetlights flickered weakly, like they were about to give up any second. Then finally, he stood up. He walked over to the small wooden shelf where an old landline phone sat. He picked it up and carefully dialed the number Aunt Mimi always mentioned. The factory. 1 ring. 2 rings. 3. No answer. He tried again. Slower this time. Pressing each number like it mattered, like one mistake could ruin everything. Still nothing. Behind him, June slowly sat up. Noah. Did something happen to Aunt Mimi? He turned. Tried to smile. But it didn't reach his eyes. She's probably just busy. Let's wait a little longer. But a little longer turned into another hour. Then another. By 10 p.m., the apartment was completely dark. The power had gone out again. It always did. A single candle flickered on the table, casting long shadows across cracked walls and peeling paint. June began to cry quietly. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just silent tears slipping down her cheeks. She didn't want to make it harder for her brother. Noah looked at her, then looked back toward the window. His jaw tightened. Then he said something no 6-year-old should ever have to say. "We're going to find her." June's head snapped up immediately. "No, it's too dark. I'm scared." But Noah was already moving. He grabbed the small flashlight from the drawer, pulled on his thin coat, then turned back to her, softer this time. "Can you stay here?" June ran straight to him and grabbed his arm. "I'm not staying alone." Her voice broke, and that was enough. Noah nodded. "Okay, we go together." June rushed to the door and grabbed something from the hook. A faded brown coat. Old. Worn. Too big for her. Noah frowned. "Why are you taking that?" She hugged it tightly to her chest. "It's cold outside. Aunt Mimi doesn't have her coat. She'll get sick." Noah froze. For a moment, he couldn't speak. His little sister, barefoot, shivering, and still thinking about someone else. He didn't say anything. He just took her hand, and held it tighter than before. They stepped out. The hallway was pitch black. The lights had been broken for months. No one fixed anything in this building. Noah switched on the flashlight, guiding them step by step down the stairs. By the time they reached outside, the night felt different. Too quiet. Too empty. The kind of silence that makes your chest feel tight. Noah tightened his grip on June's hand. "We're going to the factory. I know the way." He didn't. Not really. He just remembered hearing Aunt Mimi talk about it. That was enough. It had to be. They walked. Past broken sidewalks. Past flickering streetlights. Past shadows that moved, then disappeared. June stayed close, holding that coat like it was something precious. Every few steps, she looked up at Noah, searching his face, looking for safety. And Noah, even though his heart was pounding like it might burst, kept walking like he knew exactly what he was doing. Because he was the big brother. He had to be. After nearly an hour, they finally stopped. A tall iron gate stood in front of them. Rusty. Cold. Locked. Noah lifted the flashlight. The sign matched what Aunt Mimi once pointed out. This was the place. But something felt wrong. Too quiet. Too dark. Then the light caught something. A piece of paper taped to the gate. Handwritten. Messy. Power outage. No work today. Noah's stomach dropped. June grabbed his sleeve. "Noah, where is Aunt Mimi?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. He just stood there, staring into the darkness behind the gate. And for the first time that night, he realized something. They weren't just alone. They were lost. If you're watching this right now, tell me in the comments, what would you do if you were Noah? Would you go back or keep searching? Because what he chose next changed everything. Noah turned slowly. "Let's go home." But as they began walking back, the streets didn't look the same anymore. Every corner looked identical. Every alley felt deeper, darker. And then the flashlight flickered. Once, twice, and began to die. June tugged his sleeve again. "My feet hurt." Noah looked down. Her tiny feet, bruised, blistered. One sandal barely hanging on. He swallowed hard. Then bent down. "Climb on." She wrapped her arms around him, still holding that coat, still thinking about someone else. Noah stood up, his legs shaking under the weight, and kept walking. Deeper. Further. Into a part of the city where even adults didn't go. And they had no idea. They had just crossed a line that belonged to a man who ruled in silence and didn't forgive mistakes. And just as Noah took another step, a low engine growl echoed behind them. Then, bright headlights flooded the alley. Noah hesitated. Every instinct inside him screamed to say no, to grab June's hand and run, even if he didn't know where. But his feet didn't move, because June was leaning against him now, her small body barely able to stay upright. Her fingers still clutched that old coat like it was the only thing holding her together. And the cold. It was getting worse. One of the men stepped forward slowly, careful, almost cautious, like he was approaching something fragile. "I'll carry her," he said quietly. His voice didn't sound like the others. There was no edge to it. No threat. June didn't pull away when he gently lifted her into his arms. She was too tired. Too cold. Her head fell against his shoulder as if her body had finally given up trying to stay strong. Noah watched every movement. Every step. His eyes sharp, alert, like a guard who didn't trust a single second of peace. "I'm coming too," he said quickly. No one stopped him. No one argued. The door of the SUV opened. Warm air spilled out, wrapping around him like something unfamiliar. Noah climbed in slowly, sitting close to June, his body still tense. A blanket was placed over their shoulders. Soft. Warm. Too warm. He flinched slightly at first, like his body didn't recognize comfort anymore. Then he slowly pulled it tighter around June. The door closed. Outside, the man, the one June had spoken to, was already getting into the other car. He didn't look back. The engines started again. And just like that, the alley disappeared behind them. Noah sat still. Too still. His eyes kept shifting, watching everything. The seats. The lights. The quiet. Even the way the car moved felt different. Smooth. Controlled. Nothing like the world he knew. June stirred slightly beside him. Her voice soft, barely there. "Noah, it's warm." He looked down at her, and for the first time that night, his shoulders dropped just a little. "Yeah, it is." She smiled faintly, then closed her eyes. Still holding that coat, the car moved through the city, leaving behind broken streets, flickering lights, and everything they had known. Noah glanced out the window. The buildings started to change. Taller, cleaner, brighter, like a different world entirely. His reflection stared back at him in the glass. Small, tired, out of place. He looked down at his hands. They were still shaking. Not from the cold anymore. From everything else. From not understanding what was happening. From not knowing what would come next. From trusting someone he wasn't sure he should trust. After some time, the car slowed. Then stopped. Noah looked up, and his breath caught. A tall building stood in front of them. Lights glowing from every floor like stars trapped inside glass. He had never seen anything like it. Not this close. Not like this. The door opened. Cold air tried to slip back in, but it didn't feel as strong anymore. The man carrying June stepped out first. Still careful. Still steady. Noah followed quickly. Staying close. Always close. They entered the building. The warmth hit them immediately. But it wasn't just warmth. It was something else. Something clean. Something quiet. The floors shined. The lights didn't flicker. Everything felt untouched. Like nothing bad had ever happened here. Noah slowed down. His steps unsure now. Like he didn't belong walking on something this smooth. A man near the entrance nodded slightly. No words. Just recognition. They were led to a private elevator. The doors opened. Inside, it was silent. No noise. No smell. Just space. Noah stepped in. The doors closed behind them. And then, they started moving up. Fast. Too fast. His ears popped slightly. He grabbed June's hand without thinking. Even though she was half asleep. Even though she didn't feel it. Numbers climbed. 10, 20, 30. Noah swallowed. He had never been this high before. The doors opened. And everything changed. The space in front of him was so large. It didn't even feel real. Warm golden light filled the room. Soft. Steady. Nothing like the candle back home. The floor reflected everything like glass. And beyond it, an entire city stretched out through a massive window. Lights everywhere. Endless. Like another world. June opened her eyes slowly. For a moment, she just stared. Not smiling. Not excited. Just confused. Like she didn't understand why she was here. Noah felt the same. They were guided to a large couch near a fireplace. Real warmth. Not the kind that disappears when the power goes out. Blankets were placed over them again. Softer this time. Thicker. June leaned into Noah. Her head resting on his shoulder. He didn't move. He couldn't. Because everything felt too strange. Too quiet. Then, "Are you hungry?" Noah looked up. The older man stood across from them, watching carefully. Not cold, not warm, just paying attention. June turned her head slightly toward Noah, waiting, like she always did. Noah hesitated, then nodded once. A few minutes later, food was placed in front of them. Real food. Hot, fresh, steam rising into the air. Bread, soup, fruit. The smell alone made Noah's stomach tighten painfully. June didn't wait. Her hand moved quickly. She grabbed the bread and took a bite. Then another. Then another. Like she was afraid it might disappear. Noah watched her. A small, tired smile touched his face. Then faded. He didn't reach for anything. He just sat there, hands resting in his lap, eyes drifting toward the food, then away again. The man noticed. "Why aren't you eating?" he asked quietly. Noah shook his head. "I'm not hungry." But his voice didn't match his eyes. And everyone in that room knew it. June kept eating. Fast. Hungry. Alive in a way she hadn't been all night. Noah gently pushed the plate closer to her. "You eat." She didn't argue. She just kept going. And Noah sat there, listening to his own stomach growl in the silence, trying to ignore it, trying to stay strong, trying to be what he thought he had to be. Across the room, another figure stood near the window, watching everything, not moving, not speaking, just observing. The man June had asked, the one who didn't know if he was good or bad. His eyes rested on the boy, on the way he gave everything away, without a second thought. And something shifted again. Quiet, but real. After a moment, he moved, slowly walking toward the table. Noah tensed immediately, but didn't move. The man picked up another plate, filled it, carefully, then placed it in front of Noah. No hesitation, no softness either, just certainty. "Eat," he said, his voice low, firm. "Your sister needs you strong." Noah looked up at him, really looked this time, trying to understand, trying to see what kind of man stands in front of him now. Then slowly, he reached for the bread, took a small bite, careful, uncertain, but he ate. June looked up suddenly, her mouth still full. "Mister." The man's gaze shifted to her. "Is Aunt Mimi okay?" The question hung in the air. Simple, but heavy. "We went to find her, but she wasn't there." Her voice softened. "We couldn't find her." Noah's hand stopped mid-air. The room felt quieter again. Because for the first time, the night wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something else. Someone else. And the man standing in front of them finally turned his head slightly, looking toward the older man. "Find her," he said. Just 2 words. But something about them changed everything. And Noah felt it, even if he didn't understand it yet. Because something had just begun. Something bigger than them. Something they didn't see coming. And somewhere in the city, a woman was running through the darkness, calling their names. Somewhere across the city, under a sky that felt colder than it should have been, Mimi ran. Her breath came in short, uneven bursts as her shoes slapped against the pavement. "Noah! June!" Her voice cracked with every call, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. The street stretched out empty in front of her, dark and quiet, like the world had gone still while her heart was breaking. She had reached the apartment earlier than usual. Tired, cold, expecting to hear small voices or the sound of feet running toward the door. But instead, silence. The kind that doesn't just sit in a room. It grips you. The candle flickered when she lit it. The same old shadows danced across the walls. The couch was empty. The pillows untouched. "Noah?" she called again, softer this time. Still nothing. She checked the bedroom, the bed, the closet, even the small space behind the door, like maybe they were playing some quiet game. But there was no laughter, no movement, just emptiness. Then she saw it. The coat hook by the door. Her coat gone. Her heart dropped. Her eyes moved to the floor. Noah's shoes were missing too. For a second, she couldn't breathe. 2 6-year-old children. Alone. In the middle of the night. Out there. Her chest tightened so hard it hurt. No, no, no. She rushed out without thinking. The door slammed behind her. The hallway swallowed her in darkness. Her hand slid along the wall as she ran down the stairs, nearly missing a step. She stumbled at the bottom, her knee hitting the ground hard. But she didn't feel it. Didn't even slow down. Outside, the cold hit her like a slap. But it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except one thing. Finding them. She ran down the street, calling their names again and again. Every corner. Every shadow. Every place they could have gone. Her mind raced. Had they gone to the factory? Maybe they thought she was still there. Maybe they were waiting for her. "Please," she whispered under her breath, her voice trembling with something deeper than fear. "Just be there, please." She ran faster. The distance felt longer than usual. The streetlights flickered above her like they always did, unreliable, tired, just like everything else in that part of the city. When she finally reached the factory gate, her steps slowed, her chest rising and falling rapidly. The gate stood closed, dark, silent, but there was a faint light off to the side. The security office. She rushed toward it and knocked hard. "Hello? Please, open the door." A moment later, the door creaked open. The man who stepped out made her stomach twist instantly. Kenny. His eyes moved over her slowly. Too slowly. A smile crept onto his face, one that never felt right. "Well, look who came running all the way out here this late," he said, his tone dragging like he had all the time in the world. "Miss me?" Mimi swallowed down the disgust rising in her throat. "I'm not here for that," she said quickly. "My niece and nephew, a boy and a girl, 6 years old, did they come here?" Kenny leaned against the doorframe, pretending to think. But his eyes never left her. "Kids?" he said slowly. "Nah, didn't see any." Mimi's heart sank. Her fingers tightened into fists. She turned slightly, ready to leave. But he stepped forward, blocking her path. "I could help you look," he said, lowering his voice. "I know this area better than anyone." His smile deepened. "You just gotta show a little appreciation." Mimi stepped back immediately, until her back hit the cold metal of the gate. Her voice sharpened. "I don't need your help. Move." He didn't. Instead, his hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. Hard. Too hard. Pain shot through her arm. "You think you can talk to me like that?" he muttered, leaning closer. His breath smelled like cheap alcohol. "You forget where you work?" Mimi's jaw clenched. Her heart pounded. But her eyes didn't drop. "Let go of me." His grip tightened. "I make one call, just one, and you're out. No job. No place to stay. And those 2 kids." He smirked. "They won't be your problem anymore." For a second, fear flashed through her. Not for herself. For them. Always for them. But then something else rose up. Stronger. Colder. She twisted her wrist sharply, pulling free from his grip. "No matter what you threaten," she said, her voice low and steady, "I'm not something you can control." For a moment, the smile on his face disappeared. And that was enough. She turned and ran. Back into the darkness. Back into the unknown. Her legs were weaker now. Her breath heavier. But she kept moving. Because stopping meant thinking. And thinking meant imagining things she couldn't bear. Where were they? Were they cold? Were they crying? Did they call her name? Tears blurred her vision. But she didn't wipe them away. She didn't have time. Then, flashing lights. Red and blue. Cutting through the darkness. A police car slowed beside her. The window rolled down. "Are you Michelle Lawson?" She nodded quickly, her voice breaking. Yes, that's me. My kids. We found them." Everything inside her stopped. Her knees nearly gave out. "They're safe. Safe." The word echoed in her head, like something she hadn't heard in a long time. "Where?" she whispered. "Where are they?" The officer opened the back door. "Get in. I'll take you to them." Mimi didn't ask another question. Didn't hesitate. She got in immediately. The door shut behind her. And the car pulled away. She held onto the seat tightly. Her heart still racing. Her mind spinning. Safe. They were safe. That was all that mattered. But as the car moved through the city, something didn't feel right. The streets began to change. The buildings grew taller, brighter, cleaner. This wasn't the way to a station. Her eyes narrowed slightly, confusion creeping in. "Where are you taking me?" she asked quietly. The officer didn't look back. "They're waiting for you." That was all he said. Nothing more. The car slowed, then stopped. Mimi looked up, and her breath caught again. A massive building stood in front of her. Glass, light, wealth. The kind of place she had only ever seen from far away. Never this close. Never like this. The officer opened the door. "They're inside." Mimi stepped out slowly. Her legs felt unsteady again. Not from exhaustion this time. From something else. Something she couldn't name. She looked up at the building. Then back at the car. But it was already driving away. Leaving her alone. Standing there. In front of a world she didn't belong to. But her children were inside. And that was enough. She took a step forward. Then another. Her hand pushed the door open. Warm air greeted her. But it didn't calm her. Not this time. Because deep inside, a quiet voice whispered something she couldn't ignore. If her children were here, then who had brought them? And more importantly, why? Mimi stepped inside slowly. The doors closed behind her with a quiet sound that felt heavier than it should have. For a moment, she just stood there. The floor beneath her feet shined like glass. The air smelled clean, warm, nothing like the cold, worn-down building she had rushed out of. Everything felt too perfect, too still, like a place where nothing ever went wrong. And that alone made her uneasy. A man in a black suit approached her. He didn't smile, didn't question her, just nodded slightly and gestured for her to follow. No words. That made it worse. Mimi hesitated for a second, her fingers tightening at her sides. Then she moved. Because Noah and June were somewhere inside this place. And nothing else mattered. They walked across the lobby. Her shoes felt too loud against the polished floor. Like she didn't belong here. Like every step was being noticed, even if no one was looking. They stopped in front of a private elevator. The man pressed a button. The doors opened instantly. Again, no delay. No noise. Just smooth, quiet efficiency. Mimi stepped inside. The doors closed. And then, they started moving. Up. Her heart beat faster with every second. 10, 20, 30. She swallowed hard. This wasn't normal. Nothing about this was normal. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. And Mimi stepped into a world she didn't recognize. The space was huge. Too huge. Warm light filled every corner, soft but bright enough to show everything clearly. There were no broken walls here. No peeling paint. No flickering lights. Just perfection. But that wasn't what made her stop. It was the men. Standing quietly around the room. Dressed in black. Still. Watching. Not openly threatening. But not friendly either. Their eyes followed her as she stepped forward. Measuring. Assessing. Like they were deciding something. Mimi's breath slowed. Her chest tightened. Her instincts screamed one thing. Danger. Then she saw them. On a large couch near the fireplace. Two small figures wrapped in blankets. June leaned against Noah, her head resting on his shoulder. Noah sat upright. Alert. Even now. Even here. As soon as he saw her. His face changed. Aunt Mimi. The words were soft, but they hit her like a wave. Mimi didn't walk. She ran. Straight across the room. Dropping to her knees in front of them. Her hands moved instantly. Touching their faces. Their arms. Their feet. Checking. Searching. Are you hurt? Did anyone touch you? Are you okay? Tell me right now. Her voice shook. Fast. Uncontrolled. June blinked awake slowly. Then smiled. That small, innocent smile that always broke through everything. I'm okay. Her voice was soft, sleepy. He gave me bread and soup. It was really good. Mimi froze. Her hands stilled. Slowly. She stood up. And turned. That's when she saw him. Standing near the window. Back turned slightly. Looking out over the city. Still. Quiet. But everything in the room seemed to revolve around him. Mimi knew that face. Everyone did. Her heart skipped. Then dropped. Jared Consincade. The man people didn't say too much about. The man people avoided, without needing to be told. Power. That was the only word that came to mind. Power, and something darker beneath it. Her body reacted before her thoughts did. She stepped in front of the children. Shielding them. Her posture firm. Her voice trembling, but steady enough. What do you want from us? The room went still. Even the men around them shifted slightly. Because no one spoke to him like that. Not like this. Jared didn't answer immediately. He turned slowly. And walked toward her. Each step quiet, controlled, deliberate. Mimi didn't move. Didn't step back. Even though everything inside her told her to. He stopped a few feet away. Close enough to see clearly. Far enough not to threaten. I don't want anything, he said. His voice was calm. Too calm. They wandered into my territory. I brought them somewhere safe. Mimi's eyes narrowed slightly. She didn't believe that. Not fully. You expect me to believe that? She asked. Her voice sharper now. You're not the kind of man who does things without a reason. A small shift passed through the room. The men noticed it. But Jared didn't react. He just looked at her. For a moment, there was silence. Then he spoke again. You're right. The words came without hesitation. I always have a reason. Mimi held his gaze. Waiting. Then his voice lowered. Just slightly. But tonight, I don't know what it is. That wasn't the answer she expected. Not even close. For a second, it threw her off. But she didn't show it. She couldn't afford to. Behind her, she could feel Noah watching. Listening. Still protective. Still ready. Jared turned slightly, his eyes moving toward the children for just a moment. Then back to her. "Take them home," he said. Just like that. Simple. Final. Mimi blinked. "You're letting us go?" "No conditions," he replied. "No debts." She searched his face, looking for something. A catch. A hidden cost. But there was nothing obvious. That made it harder. Because nothing in her life had ever come without a price. One of the men moved toward the elevator, preparing. But just as things began to shift, Jared spoke again. "I'm coming with you." Everything stopped. Mimi's breath caught. The man near the elevator froze mid-step. Even Noah straightened slightly. "What?" Mimi said quietly, unable to hide it this time. "You're coming with us?" Jared didn't explain. Didn't justify it. He simply turned away, like the decision had already been made. And that was that. Mimi stood there, trying to process it. The most powerful man in the city, coming to her home, her world, the place she had spent years trying to hold together with nothing. Fear crept back in, slow, cold. But beneath it, something else stirred, something uncertain. Because this man had just done something she didn't understand. And people like him didn't act without meaning. The elevator doors opened again. The path was ready. Mimi looked down at Noah. He met her eyes. Silent. Questioning. But trusting her. Like he always did. She took a slow breath. Then nodded once. And as they began to move, as the space behind them faded, Mimi couldn't shake one thought from her mind. If he was stepping into their world now, then what would he see? And more importantly, what would he do when he did? The ride back felt different. Noah sat beside June, his body still slightly tense, but not the same kind of fear as before. This time, it was something quieter, something watchful. Mimi held June close against her chest, one arm wrapped protectively around Noah's shoulder. She didn't let go, not even for a second. Across from them, silence filled the car. And in the front seat, Jared sat still, looking out the window, not speaking, not turning around, but somehow still present in everything. The city outside shifted again. The bright towers slowly gave way to darker streets. Cleaner roads turned into cracked pavement. Neon lights faded into flickering street lamps. Mimi noticed the change immediately. Her fingers tightened slightly around the children. This was her world again. The one she knew. The one she had learned to survive in. But tonight, it didn't feel the same. Because someone who didn't belong here was coming with them. The car slowed. Then stopped. The building stood in front of them. Old. Worn. Paint peeling off the walls like it had been forgotten years ago. The stairs outside looked fragile, rust creeping along the metal like it was slowly eating it alive. One streetlight flickered above, barely working. Mimi stepped out first. Her feet hit the ground, familiar, yet somehow heavier than before. She turned, helping June out carefully. Noah followed right behind. Then Jared stepped out. And for the first time, he stood in a place like this. No hesitation. No visible reaction. But his eyes moved, taking everything in. The broken walls. The smell in the air. The silence that wasn't peaceful. Just empty. Reed stepped closer to him slightly. "You don't have to go up," he said quietly. I can take them. Jared didn't answer. He simply walked forward, up the stairs. Each step made a dull, hollow sound beneath his weight. Mimi watched him for a second, then followed, holding June tighter. Noah stayed close, never letting too much distance form between them. The hallway was dark, just like always. No one had fixed the lights. No one ever did. Mimi reached the door. Her hands moved quickly, almost automatically, unlocking it, pushing it open. She stepped inside, then reached for the switch. Nothing. She let out a quiet breath, the kind that came from habit more than frustration. Her fingers moved through the drawer, found the candle, the lighter. A small flame flickered to life. The room slowly revealed itself, and Jared saw it. Everything. The cracked walls, the stains spreading across the ceiling, the patched window, cardboard barely holding back the cold, the uneven floor. The air itself felt heavier, damp, cold, empty. He stepped inside slowly, not speaking, just looking. Mimi stood there, still. She didn't know why, but suddenly she felt exposed. Not because of who he was, but because of what he was seeing. This was her reality, the one she had fought to hold together. And now, it stood in front of someone who had never lived like this. I know it's not much, she said quietly. Her voice carried something she didn't want to show. I'm trying. Jared didn't respond right away. His eyes moved across the small table. 2 packets of instant noodles, unopened. He walked to the fridge, opened it. Almost empty. A few eggs, expired milk. Nothing else. He closed it slowly. His hand tightened slightly at his side. Not in anger. Something deeper. He turned. His gaze moved to the wall. Drawings. Childish. Colorful. Simple. But full of meaning. 4 figures. 2 children standing below. 2 adults drawn above them, with wings. He understood, without needing to ask. His eyes lingered there for a moment, then shifted. Mimi moved into the bedroom, laying June down gently on the small bed, pulling the thin blanket over her. But it wasn't enough. It never was. Noah stepped forward without being told. He took the extra coat from the hook, spread it over June carefully, making sure she was covered. Then he sat beside her, not lying down, just sitting, watching, like he always did. Jared stood in the doorway, looking at the boy, at the way he carried himself, at the quiet responsibility sitting on such small shoulders. Something in his expression changed again. Subtle, but real. Who owns this place? He asked. Mimi didn't turn. Byron Tate, she replied. Her voice carried a hint of bitterness now. He owns the whole building. Jared's eyes narrowed slightly. He fixes nothing? Mimi gave a small, humorless smile. He fixes problems by threatening people who complain. Silence followed. Heavy. Meaningful. Jared looked around once more, taking in every detail, every crack, every sign of neglect. Then he turned, walking toward the door. Reed followed immediately. Mimi stayed where she was, watching him, trying to understand. He stopped at the doorway, didn't turn back. Keep them warm tonight, he said, his voice quieter now, almost human. Then he stepped out. His footsteps echoed down the hallway, fading, until they were gone. The engine outside started, then disappeared into the distance. Mimi stood there for a long moment, not moving, not speaking, just listening to the silence that returned. But it didn't feel the same. Something had shifted. Something she couldn't explain. She turned slowly, looked at Noah, at June sleeping peacefully, for once. Warm. Safe. At least for now. And for the first time in a long while. Mimi didn't feel completely alone. But at the same time, a quiet thought settled deep in her chest. If a man like that had seen everything, then what would he do next? And somewhere across the city, that same question was already being answered. Somewhere across the city, that answer was already in motion. Morning came quietly. The kind of morning that didn't announce itself with noise. Just a slow change in light through a cracked window. Mimi woke before the sun fully rose. Not because she had rested, but because something inside her wouldn't let her sleep. She sat up slowly, listening. The room was still. June slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, her small body wrapped in blankets and that old coat no longer needed but still held close. Noah sat beside her, half asleep, his head resting against the wall. Even in sleep, he stayed near. Always near. Mimi watched them for a moment, her chest tightening with a quiet kind of love that carried both comfort and pain. Then, a sound. Low at first. Distant. Then closer. Engines. More than one. Mimi stood up slowly. Her heart began to pound again. She moved toward the window, carefully pulling the edge of the cardboard aside. And froze. Black cars. More than before. Parked outside the building. Men stepping out. Not rushing. Not loud. But purposeful. Mimi's breath caught. "Noah," she whispered. He woke instantly. Eyes sharp. "What is it?" She didn't answer. She just stepped aside. He looked out. And his expression changed. Not fear. Not exactly. But recognition. The kind that comes when something unfinished returns. Footsteps echoed on the metal stairs outside. Heavy. Steady. The kind that didn't belong to this building. June stirred slightly. "Mimi?" "It's okay," Mimi said softly, though her voice wasn't steady. A knock came at the door. Not aggressive. Not hesitant. Just certain. Mimi looked at Noah. Then at June. Then back at the door. She took a breath and opened it. Jared stood there. Same as before. Come. Still. But something about him felt different. Less distant. Like the line between his world and theirs had shifted, even if just a little. Behind him stood Reed. And a few men. Quiet. Watching. Mimi didn't speak first this time. She waited. Jared's eyes moved past her, landing on the children. Then back to her. "It's done," he said. 2 simple words. But they carried weight. Mimi frowned slightly. "What is?" Jared stepped inside without waiting for permission. Not out of disrespect, but because this moment wasn't about rules anymore. "Come look," he said. Mimi hesitated, then followed. Noah stayed close. June clung to her hand. They stepped outside, and everything felt different. Workers, tools, equipment, men already moving, fixing, repairing, the broken stairs, the cracked walls, the lights, everything. Mimi stared, confused, overwhelmed. What is this?" Jared stood beside her, looking at the building like it was something that had already been decided. "He won't own this place anymore," he said. Mimi turned to him. "What do you mean?" Jared's voice stayed calm. "The man who owned this building won't be hurting anyone again." No details. No explanations. But she understood enough. Her chest rose slowly. "And all this?" "Will be fixed," he replied. "Properly." Mimi looked around again. At the workers. At the changes already starting. At the life slowly returning to something that had been forgotten. June tugged her hand. "Mimi, it's getting fixed." Her voice carried something soft. Hope. Real hope. Mimi's eyes filled slightly, though she tried to hide it. Noah looked at Jared. Really looked. Not like before. Not just with caution. But with something else. Understanding. "You did this," Noah said quietly. Jared didn't answer. He didn't need to. Silence was enough. Mimi turned back to him. Her voice softer now. "You didn't have to." Jared looked at her. "For 15 years, he said slowly, "I told myself power was enough." His gaze shifted slightly, toward June. "But it isn't." The words hung in the air. Not loud, but heavy. For a moment, no one spoke. Then June stepped forward. Small. Careful. She looked up at him again. Just like that night. But this time, her voice wasn't trembling. "Mr." Jared looked down at her. She tilted her head slightly. Then smiled. "You're not a bad man." Everything went still. That was the moment. The one that broke through everything. The one that didn't need power, or money, or fear. Just truth. Jared didn't respond right away. Because for the first time in a long time, something inside him felt clear. Not perfect. Not forgiven. But human. He nodded once. Not for them. But for himself. Mimi stepped closer. Her voice quiet. "Thank you." No fear in it now. Just honesty. Jared looked at her. Then at the children. Then back at the building. "I don't belong in your world," he said. Mimi didn't argue. Because she understood. Some people carry too much. But before he turned away, he added something else. "But that doesn't mean I can't protect it." And that was enough. The cars didn't stay long. The men moved. The work continued. Life slowly shifted. But something else had changed too. Not in the building. Not in the streets. In people. In the way a man who had everything realized what truly mattered. And in the way a small family learned that kindness can come from the most unexpected places. That night, the room felt warmer. Not just because of repairs, but because something heavy had lifted. Mimi watched the children sleep. Peacefully. Safely. And for the first time, she believed things could be different. Noah looked out the window quietly, thinking. Then said softly, "He opened the door, didn't he?" Mimi smiled faintly. "Yes, he did. And sometimes, that's all it takes. One moment, one choice, one act of kindness, to remind us that no matter how far someone has fallen, there is always a way back. Because in the end, it's not wealth or power or pride that defines a person. It's what they choose to do when they're given a chance to care. If this story touched your heart, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from.